Hello, good morning. Rail passengers are being warned that services are extremely limited today, despite strike action being called off. Tens of thousands of rail workers had been due to walk out in the long-running dispute over pay and working conditions. Strikes planned for Monday and Wednesday have also been cancelled as negotiations between the RMT union and train operators are stepped up. Our business correspondent Mark Ashdown has the latest.
No strike, no picket line, but no trains either. Today's walkout was called off so late in the day, rail operators say it was too late to run trains they'd already cancelled. It's left passengers frustrated and confused.
We were hoping that the strike wasn't going to affect the trains. We heard it was called off, and now we're hoping for the best.
We wanted to go to Barnsley, but not doing no trains at all.
We're going to Manchester today for the Man City Fulham game, and we've had it booked for ages, and we had to end up booking way back through 2 different stops to get home when now all the direct trains could have happened. It feels like there's still a strike.
A reduced strike timetable means just 20% of services will run across England, Scotland and Wales. Those which are running started much later and will finish by the early evening. Thousands of members of the RMT union at 14 rail companies and Network Rail are involved in this long-running dispute about pay, jobs and terms and conditions. The union said that previous strikes had made the rail companies see sense and it secured what it calls intensive negotiations. It also expects a pay offer from the companies for the first time. Network Rail's previous offer of an 8% pay rise over 2 years remains on the table. The operators also welcomed fresh talks. Even though Monday and Wednesday strikes are also off, rosters are drawn up a week in advance, so there will be yet more disruption. The new Transport Secretary Mark Harper said the strikes being called off has given negotiations a better chance of success, even if the misery for passengers looks set to continue.
And Mark is with me now. So Mark, what's behind the cancellation of these strikes? What's the state of the negotiations?
Well, look, this is a pretty big development. It's the first time the RMT has called off a strike like this for negotiations. And certainly the day before a walkout, I'd say it's pretty unprecedented. So what is behind it? Well, we can speculate. I mean, look, strikes have been going on since June. That's a lot of money their members have lost. Christmas is around the corner. Is that a factor? And don't forget inflation. We're looking to get towards a peak here. So if that starts to come down in the new year, it's quite difficult for negotiators to sit across the table pushing for higher and higher wage demands when the cost of living is, in theory, getting cheaper. Now, across that table, the mood music is also changing. The rail companies say they feel they're making progress. The new rail minister said he wouldn't rule anything out. Could the government find a bit more money to try and solve this? Back to the disruption. I'm afraid it will continue next week. No strikes on Monday or Wednesday, but expect widespread disruption. Of course, we still have a strike on the London Underground and Overground network on Thursday. That's still on as far as we know. Strong advice, then check with your operator before you travel. Lots of useful information too on the BBC website.
Mark, thank you very much. A group of detainees understood to be armed with weapons at a West London immigration centre caused a disturbance during a power cut on Friday night. Police and extra staff from the prison service arrived at Harmondsworth Detention Centre near Heathrow Airport this morning. The Home Office said nobody had been injured and that the welfare of the people there was their top priority. Candlelight vigils are taking place in South Korea to remember the victims of last week's deadly crush. Investigations are continuing after 156 people lost their lives during Halloween celebrations in a popular nightlife district of the capital, Seoul. The police chief has acknowledged that there was insufficient safety planning for a crowd that large. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head has been speaking to some of those who witnessed the terrible events.
As the crowds built up in this short, narrow alley last Saturday, they found they had nowhere to go. Some of them fell, then others tumbled after them in a lethal pile-up. One 81-year-old man witnessed the tragedy from his small fashion boutique in the alley. Nam In-seok is still haunted by those scenes. He agreed to talk to us only in the seclusion of a faraway restaurant.
About 9:50 p.m., 2 young women came into my shop without shoes. They had fallen in the crowd. I helped wipe the dirt off them and helped them to calm down. I could hear people screaming, "Help me!" I thought people were fighting. I went outside and saw that people were piling up on top of each other.
A week later, Mr. Nam's shop is still trapped behind the police line. His street now a crime scene. Well, there's a couple of police officers here. I can count 5 bunches of flowers and then all the food wrappings and drinks bottles you'd expect to see after any party. It's so hard to believe that many people died here. And yet when you see how confined the space is and the huge post-COVID crowds who'd come out here to celebrate, of course people are asking why weren't the authorities better prepared? President Yoon has promised a thorough investigation, but South Koreans have heard such promises before. They were also made after the sinking of a ferry in 2014, which killed more than 300 people, most of them teenage children from the same school. Families of the victims say they never got the full truth about what went wrong. Jang Dong-won's daughter, Ye Jin, was one of the survivors.
My greatest worry, and I feel like I'm going to cry over this, is that nothing has been properly revealed over the past 8 years since we lost our children. And our anxiety now that the truth will once again be concealed after this disaster is bringing back our trauma.
So, as Koreans grieve over the inexplicable loss of so many young lives, they're also asking themselves and their political leaders, will it be different this time? Jonathan Head, BBC News, Seoul.
Well, it's a big day in sport. Let's join Mike Bushell at the BBC Sports Centre for all the latest. Hi there, Mike.
Yes, good morning, and lots has happened already. Thanks very much, Anita. England's women have booked their place in the Rugby Union World Cup final this morning, but it wasn't the comfortable ride many had expected. They eventually beat Canada 26 points to 19, but say they'll need to up their game if they're to beat the host New Zealand in next Saturday's final. Joe Curry was watching.
Excited and expectant. England supporters turning out in Auckland hoping for a straightforward route to the final. With an amateur Canada side standing in their way, confidence was high.
Rugby's coming home.
England are the #1 side in the world. They haven't lost a match now in over 3 years. Victory is something their fans have become accustomed to. Something all of their opponents have become accustomed to is England's line-out and driving maul. And once again, it proved unstoppable as Marley Packer powered her way over the line. After England scored again, Canada could have been forgiven for letting their heads drop. Instead, they showed their grit and pace. As England's dominance weakened, Canada's confidence grew, finding the gap to pull themselves right back into the game before the break. The favourites were rattled. But after the restart, a moment of magic. From behind their own try line, Claudia MacDonald made a break and found Abby Dow. From there, it was pure box office. The winger turning on the afterburners to power away.
Oh, that's a screamer!
Dow showing exactly why her teammates call her Abby Wow. Canada dotted down once more, but the game belonged to England. The relief evident at the final whistle as their place in the World Cup final was confirmed, with Dow playing a starring role.
I was definitely aware of them obviously all closing in. I remember Ellie shouting at me, and I was like, Ellie, I know you're jogging, but I'm really sprinting right now. So yeah, I think it's one of those ones where as a winger you just go, I need to run as hard as I can here and cling, and hopefully, luckily we did.
England will need to step up their performance if they're to lift the cup next weekend, as they'll be taking on the defending champions New Zealand in their backyard. The Black Ferns came through a real battle in their semi-final against France, eventually winning by a single point to set up a repeat of the 2017 final. And on the evidence so far, that one is an impossible one to call. Joe Curry, BBC News, Auckland.
Next at the Rugby League World Cup, and England faced their most physical test yet this afternoon against Papua New Guinea. And the match today is part of a double-header in Wigan following England's women's group stage match with Canada. Adam Wilde is there for us. Hi, Adam. Papua New Guinea, of course, renowned for their huge physical power and presence.
Mike, for England's men, no second chances this afternoon. They breezed through the pool stage of this competition But now we're at the knockout stage and a real step up in quality of opposition. Like you say, Papua New Guinea are a big physical side, but also a very physical side. They're a very proud rugby league nation with a great rugby league heritage. Famously, they're the only country in the world that boasts rugby league as their national sport. They, like England, will be desperate to make it through to the final four of this competition. Before England's men, England's women continue their Rugby League World Cup. They've just been warming up behind me. They take on Canada in around 20 minutes' time. And like the men, a step up in the quality of opposition from that thumping win over Brazil earlier in the week. They're hoping for a big crowd here at Wigan to roar on both the men and the women. Amongst that crowd, the Princess of Wales watching her first game of this Rugby League World Cup. It's all live on the BBC.
Thanks, Adam. Now, at the T20 World Cup, England's cricketers are into the semi-finals, but they made hard work of it against Sri Lanka in their final group match. England had to win to progress and restricted Sri Lanka to 141. Pathan Nissanka top scoring with 67 before he was caught. England looked comfortable in their run chase. Alex Hales hitting 8 boundaries, but wickets soon tumbled, and England scraped over the line in the end. Chris Woakes with the winning runs with just 2 balls to spare. A quick bit of football news before I go. Wolves have appointed Julen Lopetegui as their new manager. And the FA Cup first round continues after this bulletin with South Shields against Forest Green Rovers live here on BBC One. Anita.
Mike, thank you very much. And that's it for the moment. The next news here on BBC One is at 5:10. Bye for now.